Welcome, everyone. As people continue to trickle in, I'll just point out that we have our chat open. You can go ahead and say anything you want in there that's polite and friendly and good and wholesome. We will engage with the chat. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your questions for both me and our guest. So please engage us there, say hello, and have a nice time talking among each other too. I think this is an engaging topic today that we have for you. Now, we don't normally do these webinars on Friday in an afternoon. So those of you who can make it now, great. I love it. For those of you that are registered for the recording, we'll make sure that gets to you. And I hope you're watching this at a happy time. I want to just go straight and introduce, of course, you know me, I'm Craig O'Neill. I've been hosting these webinars on a monthly basis now for a while. I've been enjoying bringing guests in to bring new topics to you guys. And today's guest is Sara Fraser. She's with Bill Haas at Haas Performance Consulting, Bill being your dad. Sara, so
yes,
family business.
Definitely. It is. Yep. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to get to talk about this today. And like Craig said, I am with Haas Performance Consulting. And if you are not familiar with us, Bill, my dad, is the owner of the company, and he is a business coach and trainer in the industry. He's been in the industry for a very long time. And I actually worked in a shop for about 6 years as an office manager. And then I joined Haas Performance Consulting about 5 years ago. And I mainly focus right now on helping shops hire, writing job ads, doing interviews, finding service advisors and technicians. I also do a little bit of service advisor training and some social media. So I do a couple different things, and then I get to do training and go out to industry events and do courses and stuff like that. So it's been fun since I've joined, and looking forward to where we're heading in the future.
Yeah. And so I met Sara. I forget what year it was. I'm pretty sure just after COVID or pre-COVID. I can't even remember.
It was pre-COVID. It was pre-COVID.
Yeah, it was. Yes. So you were doing this class. It was very focused on millennials at that time. And I remember sitting there listening to you and Bill. I think it was one of the second times you've been presenting.
Class I had ever done. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was great. And I thought it was just immediately engaging. I thought it was so interesting the way, especially then, it was very much boomers in the classroom. And I don't say that term in a disrespectful way. I was raised by a boomer and associated with a lot of you all the time. But baby boomer shop owners in a classroom, hearing a millennial talk about the millennial generation. And it was just immediate. It was almost comically fun in some of those comments that come up. You must run into it all the time.
I do, for sure. And my dad had been doing content on Gen X and Gen Y for a while. And so when I kind of came into the company, he was like, why don't we have you talk about, this, like, this is your generation. And that's a great place to start talking about what you know. And it is a lot of fun. I love talking about my generation. I think that, you as a millennial as well, we know the stereotypes about us, and it's okay to have a little fun and embrace that, but then also to be able to open people's minds about why we do the things we do, why we think the way we think, the way that we were raised that affected that, and that affected our perception. And now looking at Gen Z, who, when I first started talking about Gen Z, I thought, well, they're not that much younger. They can't be all that different from millennials, but they really are. And so it's been a really cool learning experience, kind of following that generation for the past couple of years as they're growing up and getting to talk about them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And this is so timely. We asked a poll question up front. Before we get to our poll results, though, I do want to say one thing, and this is a little bit new. We don't usually throw this into these free webinars, but folks, Autoflow, we do engage in some nonprofit activities, and Every Village is a really, really great charity that is working on bringing fresh water to some very remote regions. There is an active project very specifically in one region here in Juba. They're looking for a vehicle. We're trying to raise $10,000. This is a key thing for them to be able to access these points and keep their program running well. There is a QR code. Please scan that. Consider any small amount. I think that as this recording goes out and as we go live, this is such a cool cause. And now let's move into the poll results. This was cool because these are the people registering for these type of webinars, our shop owner audience. This is you folks that are here. I think this is a good slice of what I expected. Notice that we are talking mostly to baby boomers and Generation X in this, smaller slices for millennials and Gen Z in terms of the audience today. There's a second poll, and I think that one is really critical to to seeing why this is a valid conversation. This asked you what the majority generation is on your staff today. And these are the results that we had from a good sample of our registered attendees. And that is showing millennials and Gen Z making up well over half of that. Not surprising in the millennial category now, folks. I'm an elder millennial. I'll be 40 next month. What's this say to you, Sarah? Does it look like something you expected?
Yeah, it definitely does. And, in 2020, Gen Z was about 6% of the workforce. And they are expected to be 27% of the workforce by 2025, which is only 2 years away. So we're really looking at majority of our employees falling into that millennial and Gen Z category. So seeing this, not surprised by this at all, definitely what I would have expected.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a little surprised that Gen Z is maybe a little bit higher than I was expecting to see, but love to see it.
I would too, because I saw your statistic that you had pointed out earlier on that 25% of the workforce. And I'm looking at this, and now this is the most common staff members in here. So not an actual statistic of the total people, right? But the majority on some, this does mean that 15% of those polled, that means that the majority of people on their staff are already, this is the case. So some shops have some very young crews, which is very cool. And then we still have some with the majority of boomers, which is interesting. A majority of Gen X, also interesting. And millennials, not surprising considering our substantial middle age range that we now represent. I still don't feel middle-aged, Sarah.
Oh, not at all. I'm going to be 38 next month, and it just doesn't, no, I still feel like I'm in that 11 to 26 Gen Z category. So yeah.
Man. Yeah, this is different, but it's also fun. Hey, raising kids, my son's going to be 18 in September. My wife and I started having kids very young. And so he's solidly in that Gen Z generation. We have the ages here for you folks to take a look at to figure out where everyone actually is. Now, these are general things too. Generations are very generalized. And so I always get a little uncomfortable when we start getting too general with like, oh, because you're this, that means you also feel this. And it doesn't work with everyone. I'm a perfect case as a millennial. There's tons of things. Go ahead.
Like subcategories now too. Between X and Y, you have Xennials, and between Y and Z, you have Zennials. Like, so there's kind of, because they are pretty wide age ranges. So when you're looking at a millennial who's 26 and a millennial who's 41. I actually have a friend who's 27 and we are both millennials, but we are millennials in very different ways. So it is, like you said, very general. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like my boss, and people know Chris Cloutier here, he turned 50 this year. So classic Gen X and having uncles and anyone else that are firmly in Gen X too. It's like, fits it, I think, really, really well. There's elements that I identify in Gen X is really common for my own like behaviors and interests and that sort of thing. But then with a 10-year difference between me and Chris, it's easy for me to see that, that there should be subgroups on there. I resisted the millennial tag for way too long. You've interviewed with Carm and you've talked with Tracy a lot too, I know. So Remarkable Results Radio, there are episodes for Sarah. The first one I did with Carm, he did because I was a millennial shop owner. Very rare thing. And I said, no, I'm not a millennial. I argued with him. It's not in the interview because I think he cut out the argument part on there. I can't remember. But I resisted that identity. Did not like it.
Negative stereotypes that come with that. But I've always embraced it. It's fun to talk about. There are things about every generation, I remember millennials were always being called lazy and they didn't want to work hard. And then Gen Z came along and you started hearing those same words about Gen Z. And I think it's just, we have a tendency to look at this age group of early 20-year-olds and go, well, they're not motivated. They're late, And so it's whatever generation it is. I think just that age group tends to get a little bit more criticism.
Yeah. Well, they're not like us.
Right. Right.
And look at why. You have, this is straight from some of your material, this chart. Thank you for providing this. I thought this was just cool. We feel this sort of thing all the time, but we forget to look back on this point. This is the world that they were born into. And I forget this with my own son. He was born in 2005. Sarah, he's my oldest. And
so he was born after the creation of Facebook. He doesn't know life without social media. They had no idea what that would be like. And this starts at 95. That's typically the age we look at Gen Z starting, simply because that's when the internet was commercialized, and what a big change and difference that was. So when you think about how old you were as a millennial, I graduated high school in 2003. So millennials learn to adapt to technology very quickly and embrace it and learn it and all of that. But for Gen Z, this is their standard. This embracing technology is their standard. That's where their expectation starts, that they've always been able to look things up and find the facts and be able to do their own research about something. And, I remember growing up in an era of don't talk to strangers, don't get in a car with a stranger, don't meet somebody from the internet. And now we have a generation who uses an app to get a ride from a stranger that they met on the internet. And it's way more safe feeling than taking a taxi. So it's just a whole different.
Yes. Such a good point. It's easy to ignore those things, but look at 2005. YouTube came out. It's no surprise. My son's known YouTube his whole life. That was the biggest mistake when I allowed him to get a phone. We have our Honda just yesterday. Actually, it started flashing on the engine light, and he said, "What's going to cause that?" Lots of potential things. We have little code readers, so I had him do that, and then he found a code. It's a 304 cylinder 4 misfire, and I said, "Well, what caused that?" I said, "Why don't you research that a minute, and then we'll talk about it." And so, where do you think he went?
YouTube, absolutely. And they either that or TikTok. YouTube and TikTok are their search engines more than where a millennial will typically go to Google if we want to look something up. This generation is more apt to go into YouTube or go into TikTok to research something.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is happening, service advisors right now with those clients. But I wonder too, does it also happen with those young technicians as a quicker resource than logging in all data, typing it in and going into the library? Is that something that's occurring in the shop? And is it necessarily as taboo as it used to be either?
Right. And part of why they prefer that is also the visual, the video, the visual learning, the face of the person versus just reading text, going to Wikipedia and researching something there. I think having those videos and personalities behind what they're learning.
Oh yeah. No, that's something that comes up regularly in this. But there's another point too that we discussed with the world that they came into. There's the high technology point too, but this is a generation that values safety and security above a lot of things. This was a key point that you had mentioned. And this is another point that you raised in your material as well. The world with technology is one thing, but look at the world and the events that really resonated in their lives. And it's not hard to see why safety and security become push button topics for this generation.
And, so I interview people all day long. It feels like some days, and I'm interviewing for technicians and service advisors. And, I don't necessarily know what generation they're in. I don't ask their age, but you can kind of tell when you're talking to a younger person. On every interview I do, I ask them, when you're looking for a new job, what are the 3 most important things in your next job that you're looking for that job to provide? When it comes to people who I assume are on the younger side of things, safety is almost always in that top 3. Having a safe environment, and that's safe physically and safe mentally, like free of harassment, free of bullying, free of working with people who are rude or things like that. So I was kind of curious then in this, why do they value safety and security so much? And then when you go back and look at how they grew up and things that were happening as they were coming of age, and not only what was happening, because as we talked yesterday, you go back 50 years, things were still happening that were not great, but these things are happening and they're seeing it in a very real time. They're seeing video footage on their phones of these events, almost instantly being provided by sources that are not necessarily the news, being people who are bystanders when these things are happening. And it just really hits home differently, I think, when you feel so close to it. And then also just all the change that they've gone through. I think so Columbine was 1999.
Yep.
That was the year before I went into high school.
Mm-hmm.
I went through all 4 years of high school and graduated without that ever affecting my high school career. We never had intruder drills. If you go back to my high school now, there are brand new sets of doors that have been installed. You can't go into the school. There are active intruder drills. It's a whole different they have a sense of fear that's unknown to any previous generation. It's a whole different thought process. And it's,
yeah, the only close resemblance I have is like some of the baby boomer generation. My parents certainly remember nuclear bomb drills in the school. A different, totally different type of fear, though. This is this mass existential threat, whereas this one's a lot more personal. The movie theater thing is on there. I don't like, since that event, there's not a time where I sit in a movie theater with my kids where I'm not assessing an exit and an exit strategy anymore. That just doesn't happen. 2001, that's my senior year of high school. My entire adult life transformed by that event. Fascinating things. And this happens, every generation has these things. Every generation to this point has not had these things putting it in front of you all the time. Right. And that's, I think, the biggest difference that we have here, and a big reason why taboo in my house, my kids are on zero social media. As long as I have the cell phone bill, YouTube was the one big mistake. Because I don't want them in this news cycle, feeling this negative.
I'm torn on the social media. I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it. And I wonder if social media existed when I was in high school, maybe I would have talked to more people, because I was a very shy, reserved, like, theater kid. I was the girl that wore all black, like, didn't talk to anybody. And I think now that what I know as an adult, had we had something where I could have connected with people and seen like, oh, they like the same band that I like, or, I maybe would have, I don't know. I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it, but it's that whatever way you want to look at it, it is what it is. And it's how they're consuming so much content right now. So
it is. Yeah. It's interesting though, because I think that there's a key point on this. Again, some material from your work. I appreciate the contributions here to this conversation. The millennials, very much pioneers of that digital age, whereas Gen Z born into it. Like, I remember newspapers. I remember that slow pace. I remember all those things and liked it. And I feel this pull myself with my own kids of maybe this wasn't so great. Maybe this technology at this layer's not so good, but here we are. And I guess there's a lot of other differences now too. And was it shaped by millennials? Was it shaped by boomers? There's lots of good stuff on this. I love the attention span piece too.
The attention span, yeah. So millennials have a pretty short attention span, but when it comes to Gen Z, it's shorter. So, when you're marketing to Gen Z, it needs to get the point across quickly. They're not going to read really long, drawn out stuff. They want it quick, and they want it to get to the point of what they're looking for. Again, going back to YouTube, it's great because a lot of YouTube videos have tags letting you know what part of the video talks about what, and they can just select that portion of an hour video to get them exactly what they're looking for. Yeah. Something else that I love on here too is the millennials are very collaborative. We're team players. We really like to work together. We like to get everyone involved. Gen Z is a little bit more on that independent side, almost going back to the baby boomer independency. When this generation was first kind of being talked about, a lot of people were even calling them baby boomers because of the similarities. I think that now that they're growing up more and we are seeing the changes, they aren't as similar as baby boomers, but there are still some of those similarities in that way. And even just in saving their money, watching millennials go into debt, they've kind of gone, I don't think I want to do that. And even back into the safety piece, they watched millennials overshare everything about ourselves on the internet. And they're like, oh, maybe I'm going to keep a little bit more close, and I'm only going to share with my close friends and not the whole world on social media. Yeah. Hence Snapchat is more favorable probably than Facebook, for example. Absolutely. And that's for those of you, if you don't utilize Snapchat, the nice thing about Snapchat is you send something to somebody, once they view it, it disappears, or you can put something on your story and after 24 hours, it's gone, and you have control of who can see that. So it's definitely you get to control who's consuming the content you're putting out. Yeah. That disappear component is actually why every time I see it on my son's phone, it's like, no, you can't have that. Don't do it. I want to know what's on there anytime. Actually, I can't do the disappear because I don't remember what I said yesterday. So my friends and I have a Snapchat group, but we have the setting set to keep everything for like 2 or 3 days or something like that. And then it disappears, because otherwise they'll message me something and I'm like, I don't even know what we were talking about. This was a whole day ago and I have to go back and read it. So
what I also like about this too, and this strikes right to the core of our application with Autoflow, is we're very communication focused and digital methods of communication at that too. And we're seeing some communication differences already. There's the text me versus the face-to-face piece. And you brought in some very interesting statistics on this. 84% of Gen Z preferring in-person communication over text and email.
right. And I think that's the personality. They want personal communication. They don't want to be talking to chatbots and robots and, having a real genuine, authentic interaction with somebody. That being said, that doesn't mean that they are not texting. They are still texting. Right. And when we talk about in person as well, that doesn't mean necessarily in the same room. It's just more so that face-to-face. So that could be a video chat, that could be the Snapchat.
What we're doing right now is the same thing to them.
Yeah. Right. And I was kind of curious. I thought maybe after COVID, they might be a little burnt out on the whole virtual thing. And so I went back and I looked, and it's still their preference to do the face-to-face. When looking at how they communicate in work, most of them do prefer to use messaging with their management. So text messaging is something that they use for that. But I think with their friends and in more personal situations, it's that face-to-face connection.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that too, like this face-to-face over virtual too, the community of people that they're connecting with is so much broader. I mean, these people have been born after the internet was commercialized, as we saw, and that this is not news to us, but it's a big world. It's a big possibility for communication. I had my neighborhood friends. That was it.
Yeah.
For years, I wasn't talking to people in faraway places at all. It was very focused in. But now that it's so much broader, they still want to have a face-to-face conversation with people that they are connected with in faraway places. It makes perfect sense in that context to me. And texting being the top choice. Cool. But that's cool because then it goes straight into the trust pieces too. And as we saw on the previous slide on the comparisons, brand loyalty a little bit more solid with millennials, and that is shown not to be the case with Gen Z.
Correct. And this goes back to that Gen Z has always had a way to fact check information. So they're not a generation that's going to believe something just because it's put out in an ad or it's put out on the internet, or, they trust their peers. What they're going to trust is going to be a lot of the reviews that you're getting. That's where they're going to be looking at when they're making decisions of who they're going to spend money with, or the influencers that they're following on social media platforms, and what those influencers are promoting is building trust with their own peers and their own generation. Transparency, authenticity, that's things they're looking for. When they go to a website, if it has stock photos, that's, you're not building trust there. They're not seeing the actual people who work for that company. Or even if they go to a company's website and it's not mobile friendly, it's not updated, it looks like it was built in the 90s and never touched again, they're not going to have a lot of trust in bringing their car to be worked on at a company that doesn't even have a website that functions on a mobile phone or that looks up to date or is easy to use. So those are some things that we can do to build that trust, is embrace the technology, have those peer reviews, have reviews from our customers, and, talk about things that are important to this generation, whether that's eco-friendly kind of things, community involvement, that kind of stuff that really resonates with that younger generation.
Interesting. Yeah, no, with the trust point too, I thought this was interesting. We talked about that study that Morning Consult did on this too, where the nonprofits were actually the one that they trusted more. And this played into some of what you were talking about with this generation, appreciating any kind of social issues that businesses and organizations are a part of. Is this something that they make buying decisions off of?
They do. And they want to work, or they want to spend their money with companies that they believe fit in with their morals and their ethics and are doing things to better the planet, better the community, better whatever organizations that they're interested in. And so I think that we've seen a lot of shops who have always been involved in local community stuff, but do we do a good enough job letting people know who we're contributing to, what we're doing, and why that's so important to us? Because that's going to resonate with millennials, but also really with Gen Z on this company really cares about my community, or this company cares more about their customers and the people who work for them. We have websites now, like I believe it's Glassdoor, where you can go on and see reviews that have been left by previous employees for companies. So you can see how employees are rating companies, and they're not going to want to go spend money with a company that's not treating their employees well. So there's a lot of that ties into that trust piece.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is cool too, because the reason we're talking about this anyway, like, again, we said this at the beginning, this is 1/5 of the US population. That's current. It makes sense. 5 generations essentially living. That doesn't surprise me too much. $140 billion in spending power to unlock in this stuff. So selling to them, I think, does deserve some more focus on this. And there's some really good points that you brought into this. This is again from Sarah's material on the subject. 59% reported they'll start using a product or service they've never tried before if the company takes a stance on a social issue they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people in 1/5 of the US population.
Right. And, it's being meaningful and showing what we do matters, right? We do something that's a service that they need, but that we care about the well-being beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this has that employer reputation piece too, which I was just talking about. Yeah, having that, knowing how employees rate that company is definitely impacting 60% of their decision to buy or not buy a product or service with that company.
Yeah, that for me is a really, really important piece for this industry to pay attention to. You talked about something earlier as well, and it was in the context of like safety and anti-bully perspectives. And this is not an industry that's necessarily been very good about taking inexperienced young people and making them feel great coming in at first. There's a lot of high ego, sometimes rather toxic personalities in some shops. And we're in an industry that does, like many trades, struggle to take in new young people. And it sounds like to me, tolerating that personality in our shop is pretty much a nail in the coffin for attracting the kind of talent we want to truly have in our shops. This is probably the biggest takeaway for this conversation to me. You could criticize this generation being sensitive or any other thing at all, and that, you're supposed to be able to take this ribbing. I think that's understandable to an extent, but I think the intent behind any ribbing needs to be obviously well-intentioned, not any more of this really harsh, almost like a hazing type of a thing that goes through in shops. I was just reading an article before this about hazing rituals. I think it was Northwestern University. A couple coaches just got fired on this stuff too. It's like that is probably, and it's not surprising, it's turned into court cases now with this younger generation Z. It's like, that's garbage.
Right. So they're not going to tolerate inappropriate behavior. They're not going to come into a workplace and go, oh, that's just how it is. I'm just going to deal with it. They know there's a lot of other opportunity for them out there. There's a lot of places hiring. They're going to find the environment that fits them and what they need. And I think we see this in millennials too.
Yes.
I know I personally have left a job, not for the way I was being treated, but for the way one of my coworkers was being treated.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the boss, the owner of the company, say something to a coworker in front of me that I was just 100% not okay with. And I went and found a different job because I was not going to work for somebody like that, because you're going to talk to, and they were always very nice to me. I never had an issue, but it was kind of, if you're going to treat an employee like that, that's just not a company or a boss I want to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. It's very interesting. But then there's this point on convenience and efficiency too. Like this goes in a whole different direction as well. Because now we're talking about, you've got the reputation on one side, but now it's definitely focused on, this is about me and my needs. And 68% consider delivery options at time before completing an online purchase. This is interesting for auto repair, to bring it back into that. Like, speed of service is the term I always use. So you have the reputation, customer satisfaction index would fall into that thing, but now we're talking speed of service. And it strikes me that this generation is really closely balancing those two things, but they're both weighted very heavily in their experience. So it's not like a prefer one, prefer the other. Just like all people, speed of service and customer satisfaction matters, but this one goes different. I got some sense when we were looking at the comparisons between Millennial and Gen Z that, hey, yeah, Millennials, multitaskers, but then there's this faster, better, more efficient component of Gen Z.
And even you have like Millennial being brand loyal. I have a great experience with the shop. I'm probably going to stay there. Mm-hmm. Gen Z could have a great experience with a shop and then see that another shop is offering something that's more convenient or that is more in line with their values, and they'll make the switch. They're not going to do that just because I had one great experience. I'm going to stay loyal to this brand or this company.
It's interesting, especially in a generation that's valuing that face-to-face element and that connection at that level. That's pretty fascinating. Almost seems contradictory in some ways, but the way that technology allows all of this stuff to play together, a lot of what we're talking about is that efficiency inside of perhaps maybe scheduling is a good example. If it's not easy to make that appointment with you right away, if it takes lots of effort on my part, these people with the shorter attention span are going to move on to something easier. And
right. As a Millennial, I won't make an appointment anywhere for any kind of service if I can't do it online. Like I won't do it. Now look at Gen Z, they're going to be even more to that point. Like my vet appointments are made online. My hair appointments are made online. Like we don't pick up the phone. So it's the ease, the convenience, being able to just, and I think part of that comes into, they might not be thinking about something that they need when your business is open. So how do they be able to make that appointment at 11 o'clock at night when it crosses their mind that, I need to get my oil changed, or I need something. And then also self-sufficient type of information too. So they might have a question about something. I think having an FAQ page on your website is really great for this generation to just be able to go and find out information quickly without having to pick up the phone and call.
Sure. And on that FAQ, it sounds to me like, reading between the lines on lots of things, instead of just having bulleted points, necessarily a short video with a talking head from the organization, probably better, right? That's interesting. So we started doing talking head training videos here at Autoflow a while ago with Scott Horn, rest in peace. He passed away about a year and a half ago. He was a firm believer in making sure a talking head was on those videos, and it puts an added challenge into creating content, because you have to be on it. You can't just voice over a good, smooth product demo. But there's the belief that that's helping people recognize the people behind there. And I think that's proven to be true from my experiences. I know that when I then go and meet people at trade shows, there's already a familiarity piece. And I feel it's unfair for going through the screen because I haven't met these people. But that you have the recognition. It's
yes. You just made me think of something too, talking about trade shows. I don't have one sitting here, but my business card has my photo on it. And it's that visual piece. And when I first did my business cards and I was redoing my dad's as well, at the same time, I put his picture on his, and he was like, no, I don't like that. I don't want my face on there. And I was like, okay. So I took it off, and then the cards came in and I was like, well, what do you think? And he's like, I like yours better.
Yeah. So, no, I've got a few cards that have some pictures on them, and they always, so good.
Yes. And it's just that personal touch that, and watching videos and feeling like you've already talked to this person before you go in kind of starts building that trust that they're looking for before they ever come to the shop.
Yeah, we just had our last month webinar. We had Patrick Egan talking about those videos that he does for shops and telling their story in video. So powerful on this. And we made mention of this generation. This is one that very much appreciates that sort of stuff. Very cool. So let's take a look at another piece. And this one for me, I loved seeing this because knew Bob Greenwood, of course. Bill and Bob, fantastic friends. Bob Greenwood passed away a couple of years ago now. And I've quoted him, I swear, in every webinar. Everybody hears me say this in this audience several times. Bob's big main phrase in his first class, Mr. Client, we're going to make sure your vehicle is safe, reliable, and efficient. And boom, that's how you entered into a conversation explaining the value of the business. And I'm thinking like he was always talking about this concept of the new aftermarket. Gen Z with these points, I feel really appreciates that new aftermarket that Bob was always talking about. Safety, reliability, and efficiency, the safety element of this generation, and then the efficiency that goes along with sustainability. And we talked on this, and this word gets thrown through the grinder in this industry as some intense passions come up about environmentalism, electric vehicles, whether that is environmentally friendly more so than gasoline or not. All the debates and the politics come into this. But what we have is a generation that is ultimately looking for sustainable items, high quality, long-lasting products.
Not only are they looking for it, they're willing to pay more money for it. And that's coming from a generation who is very debt aware and more into saving their money than spending their money. But they're more willing to spend their money on something that matters, that's meaningful. This is like the high quality, long lasting product. So to spend more to know that my vehicle is going to be safe for longer and I'm not going to have that worry or fear that I'm not going to be safe in my car. Right. Yep. So it's finding that piece and knowing that. I think I just read the other day that not only the willing to pay more, it's like 10% more. They're willing to pay 10% up to 10% more for products that are eco-friendly.
Oh, they're dream customers in this context for me. I'm in West Michigan. We have some parts of our demographic here that are very cheap. And I say cheap, I'm going to use the word nicer one, parsimonious. They trying to get them to see the value in a higher quality product was not easy. And they're very much more in that boomer generation, or maybe a high generation X, almost in that boomer range. And that conversation was tough. Like, no, it's all the same. It's all the same. And if it breaks again, it didn't matter. But I'm seeing in this one, a generation, that those selling points would stick much more naturally.
And the education piece, being able to educate them on how this is going to make them safer and what we're doing that is eco-friendly and making, because a lot of companies, again, same thing as the charitable thing, are doing eco-friendly practices, but are they putting that information out there? Are we using that as part of our marketing that we're doing these things, or we've gone, mostly paper-free or whatever little things, but it's still promoting this sustainable piece that is so important to this generation.
Yeah, we talk about going paperless all the time. Autoflow is a great platform to do that with. And yet that's been around for so many years. I forget that going paperless is not just about efficiency. Right. This has a sustainability component to it as well. That's worth mentioning to our clients. This is a benefit of doing business with us. We're committed to this, and that should appeal to this generation better than any other one that we've had presently. Mm-hmm. It's strong. We had a client, I remember this too. Me and my brother both were in the family shop sale at this time. So it was a little beyond even 5 years ago. So even with Millennials, I remember this young couple with a car, bit of a budget, service light was on. I can't recall the problem anymore. It wasn't immediately detrimental to thing, but we explained that if that service engine light is on, that is anything that's affecting the efficiency of the engine, and that is emissions related, why that light can even turn on for sensitive things at all. So your vehicle is running less efficient than it should be running. And just in that context alone of can I keep driving like this? They heard that and it's like they made the decision to go ahead and take care of this repair, which wasn't urgent in any way, but based on their conviction of wanting to have their car running at peak efficiency. And not every service advisor that I meet cares about that sort of stuff in this industry. And so you've been in this industry long enough to, we get some mindsets that really start going towards like, oh yeah, no, gas engines, this, catalytic converters, government regulation, all these things. Toss that aside. Your personal beliefs don't apply in this context. What matters is what that customer feels and thinks about this stuff. And knowing a little bit more about this generation should change how we start communicating so that we aren't just expecting to all be just like us and putting our attitude in it. You're probably going to turn off a lot of people if you start projecting your own sentiments on some of those issues. Keep that out.
And you could be looking at this and going, well, Gen Z isn't a huge amount of our customer base right now. And they may not be, but they will be in the future. And not only that, Gen Z is very influential in large household decisions. When we see families making new decisions about whether it's buying a new refrigerator, buying a new car, doing a big repair on something, parents will go to their Gen Z kids and be like, hey, can you research this for me? Because they can do it really quickly and efficiently and put together all this information. And so things like this that are important to them, they're passing that into household decisions. So even though, the oldest ones are only 26, they're still influencing decisions for potential Gen X parents that are making that would be affecting our business currently.
Oh, absolutely. That's an interesting point too. My kids are still not quite adults, so they haven't started influencing too many things for me yet, but I know that that's rapidly changing as they absorb things so much faster.
Right. And they can do it very quickly, very efficiently. And it's just what they know. They know how to go in and read those reviews and look for information and compare information about why this one's better or what this one has that's different, and make you consider things that maybe you hadn't considered before.
Yeah. No, that's interesting to think about how that works. No, they are, though. You mentioned this before. They're an influential generation. And I think that bodes well for the team that's inside of our shops then too. I would hope. And I was on a committee this week where there was 2 young service advisors active in the job right now that were contributing extremely well to some of the subject matter that needed to be addressed. And I wonder, and I wanted to ask them, we didn't have time at the end of the discussion there, but they seemed initially to me like they weren't quite sure how they were going to be received. There were some older folks in the committee too, and a lot of the middle-aged, several trainers. And these folks had been on a job now for, 3-5 years, but their input was so important to the discussion, and they were rock stars in the discussion, highly dynamic, had wonderful input, and everyone listened to them really well towards the end of that committee. I would argue that their input was some of the most valuable input that we received. And I thought it was just super impressive. I'm not used to being not the youngest person. I'm used to being the youngest person.
It's adjustment. Yeah, it's really making us feel the fact that we're heading to that 40 number really quickly, right?
Yeah, for sure. But this comes into the conversation of how we deal with this generation as staff members. And I thought it was funny the first time I was dealing with coworkers that are 10 years my junior in the shop too. They would pick on me for being 30 when they were 20. It's like, not old. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But this is where I found this topic to be really encouraging as well. They aren't just looking at things from a hierarchical standpoint, chasing titles.
No, they're not going to respect somebody just because they've been around for 20 years. Yeah. They're going to respect somebody who is leading and mentoring and, has respect for them. Their respect is definitely earned. It's not just, you're 10 years older than me, so I'm going to respect everything you say. And they're going to question a lot of stuff because that's what they know. And so it's definitely that they're looking for role models and mentors. They're looking for leaders that want to encourage and help them grow. It's not about, when they're looking at a job, it's not about this position and what I'm going to be doing right now, but where is this company going to take me 5 years from now? Are they going to invest in me? Are they going to help me grow? Are they going to put me through continual education? That's huge with this generation. They have always been learning their whole lives, whether it's in school, but learning on YouTube, learning on social media. When they're passionate about something, they educate themselves on it. And so coming into the automotive industry is something that you're typically pretty passionate about if you're going to come and work on cars and make that your life. And they want to know that they're working for somebody who's going to provide those opportunities to keep growing and learning and attending industry events. And when you have that company, that leader, that boss who becomes that role model and mentor that is helping you grow, it's a huge piece in retention for them. I'm not going to leave this company that's investing a lot of time and money into moving my career forward.
Yeah. Well, and I looked at it like the point I was making earlier too, I feel really plays into this is let's take a young apprentice, shows a lot of promise. You're a responsible, good role model and mentor yourself as the owner, but you put him in a bay or next to a bay where you're, let's call him a burrhead technician with a bad attitude or a little prickly, and isn't really interested in bringing someone else up. It's maybe feels like it's hurting his efficiency to have any questions with this guy. Probably a bad combination for both parties involved there. What do we do with this?
Or if you have maybe a more established millennial that you could put them next to, because that is somebody who is collaborative and wants to work together, or even Gen X, that would be more willing to mentor that person. And that's a big part of this too, is the culture of the shop and what they're coming into.
Well, and what I'm seeing in so many elements of this generation too, like they're very task driven people. This was another key point that you had brought into this too. Like if you keep them busy and you give them plenty of tasks, then they do them very enthusiastically. Now, do they seek out tasks on their own? I guess. Okay. So
not so much. Not so much. No. And that's, we hear that a lot. Well, my younger staff members, I just see them on their phone all the time. They're going to do what they're being told to do. But if that list is over, then they're going to find a way to keep themselves busy. So it's kind of on us to make sure they have work to do and stay on top of that.
Yeah, my dad had a saying, I brought it up here before, technicians always work better when they're preloaded. And he felt that's true on technicians in general. And this was 20 years ago, he was saying this. It sounds like for this generation, doubly true for that situation, keeping them stacked, keeping that agenda organized in such a way that they know what task they're doing. Not just that there's more to do, but that you organize it for them in a way that makes sense, right?
They really appreciate knowing what to expect. So coming in the morning and having a huddle of, how is your day always going to go exactly how you want it to? No, but being able to kind of outline, this is what needs to be done today. This is what time your break is going to be at. This is what we expect to have. Like knowing those expectations clearly laid out ahead of time, they really appreciate that kind of structure.
Fascinating. Now, structure is good. I like structure. I like processes, and I like workflows. That's what we do here.
I live in a world of chaos, so I don't know if I can relate. But
oh my goodness, no, that's cool. And so, what advice then would you give for your hiring? Let's say, what advice do you give people looking to hire in this generation?
Sure. When it comes to writing your job ad, make sure you're showing examples of the culture of your business and saying things that would let somebody know that you care about who they are and that you understand they're a person outside of work. And it's not just their skill set we're interested in, it's about them as a person. So sometimes saying something like, we're only open Monday through Friday because we believe weekends and evenings are for doing the hobbies you enjoy and spending time with your friends and family. That's something that's going to resonate. Being able to put something in your job ad that talks about the eco-friendly or socially responsible things that your company is doing would make them more enticed to come and work there. Maybe even putting a review from a current employee, that review piece is huge in building that trust. And so having something like that. And then, just when it comes to the interview process, making it as easy as possible. That's one thing I hear a lot is I'm getting ghosted all the time when I'm trying to get people to come and interview. And
that Gen Z slang.
It's more like, so ghosted would be if somebody just doesn't respond to you or just kind of disappears. And so if that's happening, look at your interview process. Is it easy? Maybe start with a phone interview, a preliminary phone interview. It's a lot easier to pick up the phone. You can do it on your way to work, on your lunch break. You don't have to get all dressed up. You don't have to go somewhere. It's a lot less stressful. There's a lot less anxiety to just do a phone interview or even a virtual interview. So making that convenience, efficient to even get them to the interview in the first place. And then also just getting to know them in that process beyond what they do and asking questions about them personally. And
I hear things that every generation should want.
Yeah.
I think this came up when we talked about this in AVI a while ago too, is like really what millennials were asking for, and some of the things that what should a generation want. We're asking for work-life balance. That was one of the key things with millennials too, is they want to have experiences in this world, as opposed
when you talk about millennials, you often hear the trophy kid phrase, right? You know, we grew up in the era of participation awards. And if you played a sport, you got a trophy, whether you won or lost. Oh, yeah. And when I look at millennials in the workforce now, that trophy, that gold star at the end of the day is simply a thank you. And I talk about this in my millennial class, but you're right. Like, what generation doesn't want to be appreciated or told, hey, you did a really great job today. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. You know,
and not in a forced, weird, robotic way that's done only in a quarterly review.
No. It might have been that AVI class. I'm not sure, but one of the millennial classes I did, I talked about this thank you piece. And on break, after break, a gentleman came up to me and he said, so on break, I texted all of my staff members and told them thank you. And a couple of them were like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And that should not be the reaction for thanking your staff for doing what they're doing, right? And we look at maybe my dad's generation who goes, nobody had to thank me for coming to work. It was just what we did. But I
can see my grandpa saying exactly this sort of thing.
Yes. It's just different. And it's not good or bad. It's just different, you know? And
so, all right, takeaway, folks, right now, go ahead and start making that plan here for your teams today. Go out there and not awkward at all. Thank everyone for what they're doing in a non-weird way.
That genuine, authentic kind of way. Yes.
Yeah. I want to hear the stories. Do people think you're off your rockers or not? I think with our audience, a lot of you are already very good at this. Met several of your teams. No, that's really great. So, Sarah, is there any other points that you would want to raise in relation to differences on Generation Z or millennials, or points we haven't discussed already? Yeah, there's so much in your presentation.
There's a lot. Yeah, I'm trying to think what we maybe have not talked about. I think just understanding that they may be different than what we're used to and what we've dealt with in the past, but they bring a lot to the table. They're very smart. They're great multitaskers. They are hard workers when you give them the work to do, and to learn to embrace and adapt to these differences and be able to bring this young talent in and provide them with the environment and the culture that they're looking for so that they can really thrive and grow and continue to learn and all of that. And they might be wanting to come into work to actually learn at work. They might not be coming out of school. You know, they saw a lot of millennials go to college and then go into debt and not be able to use those degrees. Yeah. And so we've seen Gen Z maybe stray away from that a little bit, and wanting more of that on the job experience, wanting to make money right away.
I'm just still excited about the face-to-face piece. For those that don't know, Sarah's our vice president of membership for the new Toastmasters Club that we're chartering right now with Carmen. Remarkable Results Toastmasters. We've talked about it before in our webinars. And I think that's neat because I want to see a bunch of these Gen Z service advisors, and they're really honing the skill of face-to-face personal communication, their speaking ability, their ability to listen in conversation, all of those characteristics. To me, that seems like this is the generation that's going to do this. And they came at the right time, because now, you know, we've got a lot of people working with AI systems. We have a lot of uncertainty about the roles that people play and the jobs that are here today. And are those jobs going to be here tomorrow? And I will mark this as a fact that I'm going to continue to keep this message alive. This puts an onus on face-to-face communication skills for people. I mean, we have AI. Well, what about human intelligence and being able to say, hi, all right, hi, you see what I did there? And this is key for our business and our success in any direction you go. It doesn't matter if it's your shop, your business, or another business. For this generation to be successful, they will have to hone those skills, and the one that's behind them even more so. And I think that's going to be the case. And any comments on just the communication skills for that piece, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. So people like to think that Gen Z doesn't really communicate very well. They don't talk to each other. You know, you've seen a group of 16, 17-year-olds sitting at a table at a restaurant together and nobody's talking, but they're all holding their phones. And, you hear are you guys texting each other over there? Like they are incredibly strong digital communicators. They may not be the best, vocal communicator. They may not tell you their entire life story like a millennial will, but they are great digital communicators. And again, they embrace that technology and they want to utilize software and technology in that way. So
I like that.
Yeah. I would never say that, no, they're not good communicators, because they are. They just do it differently.
Yeah. And Dave had a comment in chat that I always say, treat your staff like customers. And man, I like that way better than treating them like family.
Yeah. I worked in a shop for 6 years, and I always say, you know what, we were family, and we loved like family, and we fought like family. So it's, yeah.
One of these days,
treating your staff like customers, for sure.
I love it. One of these days, I'm going to get my brother on one of these webinars. People haven't seen him. He's very private, which is interesting because he's an X generation. I don't know what that's supposed to mean for him, but he's witty as heck and lots of fun, and people need to get to know him. But we had fun times in the shop and not so fun times.
Right.
And we're just a year and a half apart, but the differences are there too. It's funny. Oh man. Well, this is a fun topic, and folks, I'll give you one more shout out to the charity that we are really hoping to see this succeed with, the Every Village. Help them get this vehicle if you can. Any small amount helps. This will be a great cause. We'd love to see your participation there. Please give that your attention. Go ahead, scan that QR code or go to that link, and I think you're going to be impressed with that organization if you haven't heard of them before. It's really, really cool. And with that, Sara, is there any closing remarks you'd like to leave with our audience today?
I don't know. Just thank you for having me. I hope you guys were able to take something out of this and maybe think about something a little bit differently, and not, I think we have a little fear of the unknown sometimes when it comes to the younger generation, and trying to open our minds about the how and the why and the who behind that. And I find them to be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to see what we're going to learn even in the next couple of years here as they come even more into the workforce. So it's nice. It's pretty exciting, and it is what it is, right? They're our customers already. They're going to be our employees, and I think we can both learn a lot from each other.
Absolutely. Sara, where will people see you next? At what trade show will you be in?
The next thing I have coming up, I believe, is ATRA in Nashville. Yes. Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. Here we go.
Yeah. And then we'll be going right from there to Apex. So it'll be a fun.
Great. Folks,
fun week,
Sara is a great speaker. I didn't get to see her class in Phoenix because I was teaching one at the exact same time, just a few doors down. So we didn't get to partake in the content that we were delivering there. But I have to say, please seek her out. Look for her class there. I think it'll be a beneficial one. Absolutely. Especially if you haven't seen this topic before. Oh, thank you, Sara. I appreciate you taking your time on a Friday afternoon to be with us today for the content you brought to this really important conversation. I think there's a lot of great stuff in here, and I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful weekend. See ya.